Hello, everybody. We just did a psych out with the timer. We're really here. Welcome to Cub Chat Live. Happy Friday. Guys, you're seeing a familiar face right now. That is Mike Rooney. He is the commissioner of the National Cub Scouting Committee, so he's a pretty big deal. You may remember him from a few months ago. He joined us to talk about how to plan a fun and active pack meeting. Today, we're talking avoiding volunteer burnout. It's a really important topic. Mike, we are super pumped to have you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. The topic is recruiting and retaining volunteers and avoiding burnout. And so my presentation is actually going to be in two parts. Part number one, volunteer development and recruiting, and then part two is volunteer retention, because how you develop and recruit a volunteer goes a long way to determining whether you're going to be able to retain the volunteer. So that's why we're doing it twice. And they're the two topics that there's the headline of what we're doing today.
Perfect. It's a perfect topic for this time of year, I think. And I think our audience is hungry to hear a little bit about this. I'm about to turn it over to you, Mike. Just want to remind everybody out there to comment along, share your ideas, ask questions. I'll be here to pose those to Mike as we go along. But Mike, without further ado, take it away.
Okay, let's do it. First, we're going to talk about volunteer development and recruiting. So, who are our volunteers? Well, in the Cub Scout program, 99% of our parents are with our Cubs and are the volunteers. We have a few grandparents like yours truly, but basically the parents are the volunteers that are going to help run the den and the packs. And so those are the individuals that we need to develop and recruit and then retain. So we recruit our Cub Scouts by saying, our program is one where you can have fun with your kids. And so we proceed to talk about all the fun the kids are going to have and the crafts and the whatever, the camping or the hiking or whatever. We can recruit our parent volunteers essentially the same way by saying, our program is one where you can have fun with your kids. In other words, we just turn the tables. Now, when I was the Cub Master, I would say, if everyone volunteers for something, no one has to do too much. Now, all of your parents are going to attend a pack meeting with their kids. Someone has to drive these kids there. Maybe not both mom and dad, but certainly one of the parents is going to drive the Cub to the meeting. And so my suggestion and my objective and my goal has always been to have every parent volunteer for something. Now, not every parent can volunteer, but try to make a volunteer out of everyone. When I was a Cub Master years ago, a single mom came to me and said there was no way, her schedule, she couldn't do it. But you know something? Later in the year, she was able to bring a tray of cookies to a meeting. She had done something. She was involved. So our goal is to have 100% of our parents volunteer. Now, how do we go about doing that? Well, the first thing is we have to find out as much as possible about our parents, about those who are coming to the meeting. And that's why I recommend that each unit use a parent talent survey early in the program year. And if you'll look here on the screen, here is a copy of a parent talent survey, and it talks about topics they would enjoy teaching, maybe their job, profession, things that they're interested in. And I found this particular parent family talent survey online. I just Googled family talent survey and all kinds of them came up. And there's a second one here that you'll see in a second. And it just goes to show that you can have as many, you can make your own family talent survey to get the information you would like to have from your parents. The point is you want to get to know your parents. What challenges them? What are their interests? What is their background? So for example, if someone has a finance background, they may wind up being an excellent treasurer for the unit, and on and on and on. Now, getting folks to volunteer is a challenge, and it takes some planning, and it takes a little bit of patience. So how do you go about that? Well, you can talk about
I just was gonna
the need for
go ahead,
volunteers.
finish that.
You can talk about the need for volunteers at PAC meetings, but in my experience, that isn't usually effective. Do we have a question or a comment here?
We do. We had some quick shout outs just to stop for 1 second. Todd from Troop 601 in Farmingdale's watching. Rusty from Pack 84. Arnold from Pack 304 in Circle 10. Hello to Karen. She is with Pack 15 in Pleasantville, New York. Hello from Sunny Amon. The Transatlantic Council is in the house. You guys, let us know, how do you recruit volunteers? Keep those ideas coming in the comments. And I do have a question for you. Alexander is saying the parents where he is seem very willing to volunteer in their dens, but it's hard to get them to volunteer for pack jobs. Any tips, or could maybe that can fold into the next portion of this?
I'm going to come right to that. So the first thing I mentioned was just mentioning at the PAC meeting we need volunteers, and I said that wasn't particularly effective. The next thing you can do is pass around a job sign-up form during PAC meetings. I don't think that's particularly effective either. Lisa Wiley, our chair of the National Cub Scout Committee, suggested to me that I might want to create a bunch of Post-it notes with different tasks and take those to a meeting and have them on a board, and parents would take off a task that they could do. I tried that. I was a miserable failure, actually, because I defined the jobs I wanted incorrectly. In other words, I said, who's going to volunteer to run the rocket launch? Who's going to volunteer to be in charge of the Blue and Gold Banquet? No. You don't, that's not going to work. What you need to do is say, who will assist me setting up for the rocket launch, or who will help be involved? In other words, be a little bit more general and not quite specific. And I think we'll do a little bit better in the past. But here's what you do. Here's the way to recruit at the PAC level. Watch your parents. Who is taking initiatives? Face-to-face discussions with them. Smile, conversations, then conversations that sort of turn to needing their help. And if you've done the parent talent survey, you already know something about the background. So remember my goal. Every volunteer needs to do something. Everyone in the PAC needs to do a little bit. So with that, with the background that you've got, face-to-face conversations, face-to-face discussions with the individual, and say, here's what I need you to do. Now, especially with new volunteers, you need a specific manageable task with a beginning and an end. So when you're talking to someone and they may be a little hesitant, say, listen, here's what the task is. It starts here and it ends here. Assist with the Blue and Gold Banquet, for example. Then have the new volunteer work or be assigned with a veteran volunteer with the idea that the new volunteer will take over the event the next year. So in other words, they've got a mentor there. And if possible, give the new volunteer or the person you're asking to volunteer a job description. It can be pretty simple, but description of what, and it should be realistic. And depending upon the job that you're looking for, the BSA has all kinds of job descriptions online. And sometimes a volunteer will need some training. And that's why assigning a new volunteer with a seasoned volunteer as an assistant is such a good idea. That person trains the new volunteer, the helper, into what they're going to need to do. And remember, each volunteer certainly of a major activity needs to be in a position to recruit the person who's going to take over when they leave. And it's not a bad idea to do an educational explanation of what some of these major jobs are to all the parents as a whole. Every couple of committee meetings, we try to have a parents meeting. And when the parents come, not often, but a couple of times during the year, we talk about, here's what the blue and gold banquet is. Here's how we're going to set it up. Here's what we're going to need to do. And at that time, you can talk to folks. Could you order the cake? Could you bring the napkins, or that type of thing? And then at the end of the volunteer event, you want to give the volunteers feedback. You're going to have that critique at your committee meetings, parent meetings. So talk to the parents about what went well and what we're going to do next year. Okay, so now we have a volunteer who's been asked to do a task. We've related to his or her interests and her background. We've had a beginning and an end of the volunteer activity. The volunteer has had some sort of training or has been an assistant to someone who knows what they're doing. So hopefully at this point, we have a volunteer who's had a good experience and he's had a good time doing what he's done. So now we turn to part 2, volunteer retention.
Perfect.
Now,
Mike, before we get into that, let's take a quick look at some of the comments and give some shout outs. Hello to Raymond in Boston. Hello to Steve in Whitley Bay, England. Hello to Bear Den in Danville, Virginia, and they're a den leader. Hey guys. Okay, Alicia, like you mentioned, I've seen Lisa recommend this before. They make a sticky note bulletin board. Each sticky note has one task. Parents can pull the sticky note and fill out the sign-up sheet. I love your point, Mike, that not even do the tasks on there need to be somewhat general. They need to be small, as opposed to having 5 sticky notes with 5 big tasks.
I blew that myself. I blew it.
It's hard to know. You're all learning. Breaking those 5 into maybe 15 really small tasks. Because if I see bring cookies, I could do that. Or if I see, like you said, maybe set up the blue and gold tables, I can do that. But I certainly can't plan the whole thing, especially if you're a brand new volunteer to the unit. Brett says, so you had just talked about following up with your volunteers and seeing if it has been a good experience. It sounds like maybe he's on the flip side and he has a question. They need to reboot a little bit. They are going to be having a parent meeting on Monday and they desperately need some more volunteers. He says, what do I say?
Well, I think you put the cards on the table face up. Listen, folks, we have some issues, but I tell you what, this might be a perfect thing to bring the Post-it notes with small little comments, and everyone who shows up will see those Post-it notes. And then, of course, make sure you say, and this person is going to be in charge, but you're going to be the assistant and you're going to help. I think you keep the task small. It's best if you can do this one-on-one. And I try to talk to some of your parents even before they get there, but one-on-one is always better.
Wendy totally agrees with you. That's literally what her comment says. She says, talking to parents one-on-one seems to be more effective because you can talk about the specifics and break it down so it's not overwhelming. So you're seeing eye to eye. Very, very helpful. Thank you, Mike. Okay. I know we've got the exciting second half of our presentation to check out. I'm excited to see what you got to say.
Well, this isn't, well, yes, this is the exciting second half. Here we go. And now we're going to talk about volunteer retention. And there are lots of factors that relate to retention of volunteers. But the key to me to volunteer retention is in a simple 5-word question. And the question is this: is the volunteer having fun? This is what we want of our Cub Scouts. We want them to leave the meeting and say, gee, that was great. I can't wait to come back to the next meeting or come to my den meeting. We want the same thing for the volunteers. We want the volunteers to have fun. That's what's going to keep them coming back. So we've tried to establish a good volunteer experience. And so what do we do extra? We show appreciation. And there's 1,001 ways to give appreciation. It's not necessarily trophies or plaques. For example, after a meeting or an event, you might consider sending an email to the people who worked on it. We have a Arrow of Light den leader who has been extraordinary in providing special meetings projects for our Arrow of Light Cubs. And I will almost always sit down at my computer after I go home after the event and send Mike a note and say, Mike, I want to tell you that was an extraordinary event. Thank you, thank you. Actually, a written note, good job, is not a bad idea. Someone who is responsible for the blue and gold banquet, you might want to give a bouquet of flowers at the end of that event. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend money, but you want to show the volunteer that you really, really appreciate it. Little thank yous along the way are basically what I'm talking about. And the unit leaders, not just the Cub Scout master, but all the unit leaders need to go out and establish one-on-one relationships with these parent volunteers. If you've got a pack where the parents get along and enjoy each other and maybe even do things outside of the pack meeting, that is reinforcement to the fun and the enjoyment that they're having. Now, I've talked in the past about having a pack photographer. This is a person that today has an iPhone, and I suggest that that pack photographer take pictures during the meeting. Don't get in the way of the meeting, but if there's a presentation of awards and the den leader is there, take a quick picture, and then that night or the next day, the pack photographer emails that picture to the volunteer. Hey, thank you for working on this. Or I thought you would enjoy this picture of you and your den on this particular activity. So I really like the idea of a pack photographer and would definitely encourage that. Now, at the end of the year, it's okay to sort of make a major production, and maybe here a plaque or some kind of an award isn't a bad idea. And certainly, when you have volunteers who are going from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts, you want to recognize the work they have done in your pack, and don't forget them. In our particular pack, we have parent volunteers who started as Lions, and now their Arrow of Light sons and daughters are headed off to a Boy Scout troop. We can't let those volunteers leave the unit without appreciation of what they've done. Maybe even a gift card, or maybe having a little family pack dinner for volunteers. Really, the sky's the limits on that type of thing. And consider nominating your special volunteers for district awards, and sometimes there are council awards. And you can make up awards. Actually, those are the most fun. Make up awards for special and fun things that a volunteer has done. And you can have a den have a craft activity of making awards that you're going to present to someone. So consider that. Now, do we have any more shout outs here?
We definitely do. And I just wanted to say I like this drill down of different ways to thank parents and recognize parents and volunteers, because something Lisa always says is and I notice this more and more, that we have a tendency to say, thanks for all you do. We say thanks for all you do to everybody. We put it at the end of emails, the end of texts. And yeah, the sentiment's nice, but it's so vague, and it's not thanking somebody specifically for what they do the way that you can with recognition, like an award you make up, for instance. Or I like the idea you have of a pack photographer who's sending a picture. You're kind of capturing the action. There's going to be like some happy emotions tied to seeing those pictures. And you realize like, oh, people do recognize what I'm doing. I appreciate that. I thought that was just a very good idea, especially in the social media age, I think.
Right. And you may take, first of all, it's inexpensive to take those pictures. And you can delete the ones that really don't turn out. Often they don't. And if you take pictures at each pack meeting, maybe towards the end of the year, there'll be a handful, 3 or 4 or 5, that are really nice pictures. To go to Walgreens or wherever you can print those out, get a very inexpensive paper frame, put those in there, and that can be part of the thank you. Here's a picture 4 meetings ago when you did so and so, and we were so grateful, and here is a picture of that. And folks will keep those and put them up someplace.
It's true. You could even make it an activity if you wanted the scouts to help decorate frames or something. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So some quick shout outs. Dawn says hello from Pack 316 in Avoca, Pennsylvania. Wendy says this is a great topic. They plan to review this at their PAC meeting, so taking some notes to try to get more participation from parents. Thanks for all the good info. Steven is repping PAC 227 and Troop 223 in Clyde, Texas. Okay. Ooh, we've got a big comment. We've got a couple big comments. Wendy says they try to recognize one parent volunteer each monthly meeting. They give them a certificate and they give them a scouting hero pin. Ooh, that's a good idea. They talk about what they did so parents could see how each person can contribute. For our fundraising event, they had a lot of parents donate items or time, and they wrote out thank you notes and then had their entire leadership team sign them. What do you think, Mike?
That is a fabulous idea, and I'm taking notes from the comments coming back because I want to use some of those ideas also.
Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. Our commenters always are volunteers out there, our volunteer audience. You guys have great ideas. Keep these comments coming. Look at what each other have to say. You might be watching this video after it's actually live. Let's keep the conversation going for sure. Ben has a question. I mean, it's not really a question, but it's something. He's saying, half of my parents are den leaders for other dens, ... I mean, I'm going to just infer from that he's saying it's a challenge to maybe get them to volunteer with their den. But Ben, I think this is the perfect application for those really small tasks. Right, Mike?
Yes. And one thing I wanted to talk about was sort of the social aspect of running a pack, the social aspect as to how it relates to the parents. Because my earlier point was when the parents are enjoying each other and the parents develop relationships with other volunteers and other parents in the pack, what it does is it goes to the enjoyment they're having, the fun they're having, which is what the major factor for me goes into volunteer retention. So let me flesh that out a little bit. Often, your Cub packs meet in the school cafeteria, or maybe there's a meeting hall, or maybe there's a church office or room in a religious facility that you meet in. Those are nice. It's a little bit antiseptic, in my judgment. And what happened in our pack was that when COVID hit, our school cafeteria was no longer available, and you couldn't meet, dens couldn't meet in church meeting rooms. So now you were stuck. What are you going to do? Well, what our pack did is we moved meetings to someone's home. Now, you can do a course in a park also, and people did that too. But the meetings that we had in the homes were incredibly successful. We had a pine wood derby in the driveway. We had a campfire in my backyard where we did s'mores and whatever. But the point, it was a social event, and the parents were then talking to each other. It was something that they don't have an easiest time doing that in the school cafeteria. And and of course the bathrooms are nice and close, but you're in a nice kind of informal social settings. And we discovered that the parents enjoyed those meetings more than they enjoyed the meetings in the school cafeteria. So I would strongly encourage PACs to consider, even if you don't have to, having a PAC meeting in someone's backyard or in a park, any place where you can get the parents to spend time with each other, because that goes towards retaining them as volunteers. Well, okay, so the bottom line is, if the parents enjoy the PAC meetings, if they're having fun, that's going to work. So the litmus test here is the unit meeting the needs of the volunteers? Do you have volunteers who feel they are valued and appreciated? And the bottom line is, are the parents having fun? Are the volunteers having fun? And are they having fun with their son or daughter? And that is a summary of where I think we need to be.
So, something that I actually just thought of, and it kind of goes along with one of the photos. I don't think that we've looked at it yet. I know we're saving one for the end, but I think there's a photo of a piñata assembly.
Yes, if you would put that one up, let me explain what the point is there. Okay, this is a picture of a PAC meeting a month ago. And The reason that's here is I want to show you that the pack activity is a craft, and we're going to talk about that. But you notice everyone at the meeting, all the parents that are there, have to volunteer. And the reason they have to volunteer is because these kids in this photo are making paper mache pinatas. And there is paper mache goop all over the place. Notice there's a plastic sheet on the table. This is the school cafeteria. Notice the kids that are not in their Class A uniforms because they're going to go home covered with paper mache material. And I just point out quickly that the little one there in the yellow T-shirt is my youngest grandson. I mean, I wouldn't want to pass on that. But the point is, if you have pack activities where you have a craft or something that requires volunteers, everyone's going to pitch in because they have to.
So something I noticed about this picture and that you made me think about is, yes, it definitely looks like this activity would require a lot of adult participation. But if I'm an adult, and I know that there are rare adults who they do thrive in an environment surrounded by young kids, their co-leader and what have you. But this looks so much more fun to me to head to as a parent than if there are two leaders who are leading an activity and all the parents are kind of sitting off to the side on their phones. They're all actively there. They're talking to each other. They're laughing. It seems like it would build that community you're talking about where, parents can walk away from these meetings and say, yeah, I had fun too. It wasn't just, my son.
That's right. The kids went home covered with goop. Most of the parents went home covered with paper mache goop. They had a fabulous time. Anytime a kid can get messy in his hands and goop, he's happy. So this was a very successful pack meeting. What happened is, just as a follow-up, each cub was to take their piñata home, and after it dried, they would color it in some way. And then this coming Monday, they're going to come back to the meeting. We're going to fill them up with candy, and very carefully, each kid is going to take a baseball bat and open up his piñata. To be continued as to whether this was a good activity or not, but that's the plan for this particular activity involving all the parents.
I feel safe. I feel very confident that the Cub Scouts are going to enjoy that portion even more, but you'll have to report back. Mike, something that we haven't totally touched on is that, yes, you are the commissioner for the National Cub Scouting Committee. You are a volunteer at the national level, but you're a volunteer at the local level too. We just glimpsed your grandson in that picture, but you work with the units as well, correct? They're units.
Oh, yes,
they're in the same pack.
Yeah, many of us, and I suspect almost everyone who is watching this has volunteered in numerous capacities. I've been involved in when we used to have regions. I was in the region. I've been on national committees. But the truth of the matter is, the most fun I've ever had was working with the kids. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where I had my most fun, and that's where I am right now as a volunteer with my two grandsons' Cub Scout pack.
Which brings us to the end. Before I mention this, I want to say shout out to Jeremy. He wants to say that photos that you take, that you might have a pack photographer take, are great to use for a video slideshow at the blue and gold ceremony.
Yes.
Great idea, Jeremy. Pack 757, shout out. They're in Tucson, Arizona. I think I also saw that we have a Puerto Rico, Pack 13 from Puerto Rico's in the house. That is super cool. So as you have this boots on the ground experience, Mike, we are really lucky for something coming up. We get to have you back on next week. You are officially Cub Chat Mike.
Cub Chat Mike. And let me tell you what we're doing next week. Now, next week, 1 week from today, I'm going to be back, and we're going to talk about Cub Scout crafts. And anyone who's listening today, I would really ask that you send pictures of these Cub Scout crafts, because we are going to show as many as we can of different ideas. Now, look at this. This is a teaser for next week. That is my middle grandson, and what he is holding is a little display of his belt loops. Now, his grandmother worked with him on that. She went to the hardware store and got paint stir sticks. And those paint stir sticks were perfect because they were not too thick, and you could slide the belt loop on there. And then she created that situation. This young man is going to go off into Boy Scouts very shortly. and he's going to put that on his wall to remember the fun he did. So this is just one craft that we're going to talk about next Friday, a week from today, with me. So all about you out there listening, please come back and give us your ideas of fun Cub Scout crafts.
Yes. So if you are not watching this live, mark your calendar for next week to watch with us at 2 p.m. Central on Friday with Mike. Cub Chat, Mike.
April 1.
Yep.
April 1.
April 1, mark your calendar, set a reminder. You're going to want to tune in. I don't want to curse it, but knowing the volunteers, I think this might be our most popular topic ever. I think that they live for the Cub Scout crafts. I guess time will tell. We'll see you in 1 week. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that we've missed? Anything you want to add before we let you go?
I want to add two things, and that is, we don't have an annual meeting scheduled now, but as soon as we get out of bankruptcy, we're going to schedule an annual meeting someplace. And I hope to see all of you out there at the annual meeting. Look for me. I'm going to be wearing my Cub Scout Mike, Cub Scout neckerchief. And the final thing I want to say for all of the Cub Scouts is make sure what we always are is be positive. And we spell positive P-A-W, positive. So that's all until next Friday.
Very good. Let's run off that energy for the next week. Let's keep it positive. And we will see you in a week, Mike, and we'll see everybody else next week. We can't wait. Thanks for tuning in today, and keep the comments coming.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.